AVC. This is Michael, Notes and Tones. First off, I want to give a big thank you to Sherv. A few weeks ago, he gave my channel a shout out in his video on jazz books, and I much appreciate it. And in this video, I'm gonna follow up on Sherv's video regarding jazz books and just talk about a few books that might be of interest to people that are following the Blue Note Project and the John Coltrane Memorial Project in the VC. So let's get started. First off, let's deal with Coltrane. The first book is on John Coltrane. Is John Coltrane, His Life and Music by Lewis Porter. This was published in 2001 on University of Michigan Press. The second is John Coltrane, The Story of a Sound. This was published in 2007 by Ben Ratliff, and it is on FSG. So the Coltrane book by Lewis Porter. Lewis Porter is a professor of music, and he is also a jazz pianist. He's played with people such as Terry Lynn Carrington and Dave Lieberman. Those are the only two I can recall off the top of my head. This is a scholarly work, even though was written almost 20 years ago. It is still the definitive biography on John Coltrane. It is, it has all the works of a scholarly book. It has the endnotes. It has the musical notation. It is a deep dive into John Coltrane. The Ben Ratliff book is a book for people that want to get into, that are interested in John Coltrane, but they don't want to get into all the technical aspects and jargon and even the musical notation that are contained in the Porter book. And I'll say this, even though the Porter book has uses musical jargon and technical language, and it is full of musical notation, it is still something that will appeal to I'd say the general reader. Both of them are very good at just going into Coltrane's development, and specifically, before the Prestige years. Coltrane played in the blues band of Eddie Cleanhead Vinson, the blues musician, alto player. Played in the jump blues band of King Colax. Played with Dizzy Gillespie's big band. He played in Earl Bostic's band, and he also played in Johnny Hodges' band. So when you look at Coltrane and you see what a supreme player of the ballads he was, and a supreme interpreter of the blues, you can get a sense of where that came from, and just the bands that he played in during his apprenticeship. So that was a really some interesting facts that I got from both books. Both books really make the point of how much a supreme player of the blues John Coltrane was. This is John Coltrane Plays the Blues. Just when John Coltrane was recording this, and when he was recording sessions for Atlantic, that when he was frequently seen traveling with a book of Negro spirituals, and just listening to his playing of blues, especially on this album, you can really hear that spiritual element that he was injecting into the blues quite distinctly, especially on Coltrane Plays the Blues. But you go to also Crescent on Impulse. You really hear that spirituality that Coltrane was brought to the playing of the blues. So, yeah, these are two books. Like I said, they're readily available out there. You can get them used, the hardcovers used. They're still out there, new in paperback. I would highly recommend both of those books. Coltrane, The Story of the Sound, Ben Ratliff, and John Coltrane, His Life and Music, by Lewis Porter. The next book, two books that I want to talk about are related to the Blue Note project. And this one here is Blue Note Records, a biography written by Richard Cook, and Hardbop, Jazz and Black Music, 1955 to 1965 by David H. Rosenthal. Both of these authors are no longer with us. They have passed away. David Rosenthal passed away shortly after the publication of this in 1992, and I believe Richard Cook passed away probably around, I believe, 2007. Richard Cook was one of the writers of the Penguin Guide to Jazz Recordings, which was published, I believe, through 9 editions. I still have a number of my editions because back in the days of CDs and albums, things would be deleted by the record companies. So it was useful to keep your older editions because certain albums were deleted in the most recent edition, and it was very valuable because very concisely described the recordings in just a few paragraphs. So and a large variety of recordings, just not your hard bop and swing, but they also covered the avant-garde. So Richard Cook in the Blue Note biography covers the period from the beginning through the classic period, and when Bruce Lundvall revived the label in the 80s on up. I think this book covers up until the early 2000s. So it ends before the Tone Poets, but it does get into the reissues of the classic Blue Note recordings on CD. But what's really good about this book is that he, just as in the Penguin Guide, he goes into the recordings in a concise manner, and he covers the whole of Blue Note up until the early 2000s. He is really good at covering all of the players during the classic period of Blue Note. He covers the major hitters, your Hank Mobley's, Horace Silver's, Art Blakey, but he even covers certain musicians that only recorded 1 or 2 recordings for Blue Note. such as Babyface Willet. He, he's discussed in the book. They also discuss the vocalists that Blue Note recorded during the Alfred Lyon, Francis Wolff era. That would be Sheila Jordan and Dodo Green. So, you know, like I said, not only the heavy hitters, but people that just had a cup of coffee at Blue Note and, you know, went on to record other works at other labels are also covered in the book. So, you know, so you'll get a good overview of the classic era. And in the back it also has in the appendix it also has the you know a discography of the classic period, you know, starting with the modern jazz 5000 series. You know, you have your 1500 and through the 4000 series. So there's a discography that's in the back that's pretty useful. So the other book that I wanted to talk about, and it's one of my favorite books, is Hardbop by David Rosenthal. This was published in 1992 on Oxford University Press, and I believe the Richard Cook was published on Justin Charles and Company published that. Not really a publisher that I'm aware of, but Hardbop was put out by Oxford University Press. It's really still pretty easy to find this, good copies of this used in hardback and paperback. The Blue Note Records book is going to be, I'm going to have to do some searching for it, but I have seen copies available on eBay. But getting back to the Hardbop book, this is one of my favorite jazz books. I'm always returning to this book, especially in light of, you know, all these Tone Bohet classic reissues that are coming out now. You know, David Rosenthal really gets this period better than any writer that I've read. This may have been the first biography on Hardbop. There's another one out there, I believe, written by Kenny Matheson, but this is the premier book. You know, he discusses the neighborhoods in which Hardbop was played, the black neighborhoods, the bohemian neighborhoods where the clubs were located. He talks about, you know, certain aspects of the playing. One of my favorite chapters is called The Power of Badness, where he talks about how musicians such as Lee Morgan and Jackie McLean in their playing, you know, projected a sense of malice, and that, you know, they were aggressive, assertive in their playing, and you know, that's what drew a lot of people to the Hardbop style, that it was aggressive, it was assertive. You know, Jackie McLean's, you know, one writer called The Trenchant Attack of Jackie Mack. You know, that was, you know, a great appeal to a lot of listeners. And he's also really good at describing Stanley Turrentine, and there's a chapter called Tenors and Organ, where he talks about Turrentine's muscular, sweet sound, and he's particularly talking about this album right here, which has been reissued on a Tone Poet. He talks about how, you know, Tarantine's sound on the tenor, it's somewhat derived from the alto sound of Johnny Hodges. And, you know, on a song such as Doreen Don't Cry, you really can get a feel of the Hodges influence that affected Tarantine. And it's you know, a point that I haven't read from any other writer regarding Stanley Tarantine. So, you know, that was also a really valuable insight that I got from this book. And Rosenthal was the first person to really discuss Tina Brooks. You know, in this book, I think he devotes about, I'd say, a good 4 pages to talking about Tina Brooks. And you know, I read Rosenthal before I had purchased any Tina Brooks recordings as a leader. I don't even think, you know, his recordings as a leader when this was written, they were only available on the Mosaic box set. I believe it would take until the late 90s until the CDs of his work as an individual, as a leader, were available. So, yeah, that was also, you know, something of real value is Rosenthal's insight into Tina Brooks. You know, he is very good at describing Lee Morgan's role in Hardbop, and he's also excellent at describing Jackie McLean's role. One of the reasons that I picked this up back in the early 90s was because there's a blurb on the back from Jackie McLean that basically states, you know, this guy, Rosenthal, he gets my involvement in the music of that time correct. So, you know, Jackie McLean, you know, endorses Rosenthal's interpretation of the Hardbop period. And speaking of McLean and Rosenthal, Rosenthal would also write the notes to this box set, also put out by Mosaic. So the Jackie McLean Association went on a little bit further before Rosenthal passed away from cancer in I'd say probably 1992. But, you know, Rosenthal also makes a good point in the book that I wasn't aware of, was that Hardbop, you know, had a tough time with a number of critics, and that, you know, some of them thought of the music as repetitive, and that Downbeat magazine seemed to consistently assign some of the best Hardbop records to a critic that just seemed to have nothing but disdain for Hardbop. An example Rosenthal uses is the Blakey recording, The Big Beat, where, you know, the critic states that, you know, hey, Shorter and Morgan, you know, they meet average expectations on this recording. And regarding Bobby Timmons, is that there? He just says, you know, there's something that's been done before, nothing special here. And, you know, what was surprising was, this was an attitude that lasted among some critics until, well into the late 70s. There was a writer that did a book on the history of jazz who stated, that by 1960, the hardbop movement was done. Everything after that was just, repetitive. So, there during its time, and and into the late 70s, there was actually a good number of critics that were hostile to hardbop. And I definitely wasn't aware of the hostility that existed until I read the Rosenthal book. And I would say about this book, it's really well written. Rosenthal was a poet. He was a translator of Portuguese and Catalan literature. This is an extremely readable book, and he covers a lot of territory. I know in one of Scher's older videos, he also talks about this book, and I can't, there's not enough praise that I could give this book. Like I said, you'll keep it nearby, and you'll continually refer to it. So that's the two other books that are related to the Blue Note project: Hardbop, Jazz and Black Music, 1955 to 65, and Blue Note Records, the Biography. And so, if you guys have any books that you think that are would be of interest to the VC related to these projects, just put it down in the comments. All right. So I will see you guys down the road. Peace out, VC.